Hearty good afternoon to everyone. Hope I am audible. Hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Today I have the privilege and honor to welcome the expert for today's session, Dr. S. Shanthakumar sir. He is the director of our esteemed university, GNLU, with about 27 years of teaching experience at prestigious universities, including Hidayatullah National Law University. He is an alumnus of Madras University, Chennai, where he earned his graduation, post-graduation, and doctorate degree in law. Before joining the legal academia, he had practiced at the Madras High Court for 7 years. His area of specialization are environmental law, human rights law, international law, and constitutional law. He has authored 3 books on environmental law and 2 books on human rights law published by LexisNexis, National Law School of India University, Tamil Nadu, Dr. Ambedkar Law University, etc. He has published a number of research articles on contemporary legal issues in various national and international journals and edited volumes. He has presented papers and delivered keynote addresses in many national and international conferences in India and abroad. Recently, he was elected to represent South and West Asia at IUCN Academy of Environmental Law. Currently, he is the chair of Environmental Law Study Group of the International Association of Law Schools and member of the Teaching and Capacity Building Committee of IUCN Academy of Environmental Law. He is also serving as the country focal point for India for the Asian Development Bank project on environment and climate change law. He had executed the Environmental Law Capacity Building project funded by the World Bank through the Center of Environmental Law Education, Research and Advocacy, NLSIU, Bangalore, the Law Teaching and the Legal Research Skill Project of the British Council and Cardiff University, UK. He is also the recipient of prestigious awards like the Environmental Law Champions Development Award from Asian Development Bank, Philippines, and the Best Social Scientist Award from the Indian Society of Criminology. He had traveled around the globe extensively and had the privilege of being invited to deliver lectures at 23 premier universities in various countries. May I now request Dr. S. Shanthakumar sir to enrich us on the topic, on today's topic on review of literature. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Jatin. I think, Madam, you can, since me and William will be sharing this session, I think it's good that if you can organize the introduction of Dr. William as well, so that they can also know William.
Yes, sir. It is already done, sir. There's somebody who is going to give the introduction of William, sir, also.
Okay.
Somebody. Yes.
If I may, am I audible?
Yes, Palak, you are audible.
Good afternoon, ma'am. A very good afternoon to one and all present. Myself, Palak Jakyani, research scholar at Gujarat National Law University. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our distinguished guest for today's session, Dr. William Nunes, Associate Professor of Political Science at Gujarat National Law University, Gandhinagar. Sir has an enriching 14 years of teaching experience and about 10 years teaching research methodology for the LLM program. His areas of general interest include political philosophy, security studies, and India's foreign policy. He has completed his MA, MPhil, and PhD in political science from the Maharaja Sayaji Rao University, Baroda. Sir's PhD involves the study of security issues of South Asian states, a case study of Sri Lanka. Dr. Nunes' academic interests are mainly in the areas of South Asian security studies, Indian foreign policy, and political theory and philosophy. Dr. Nunes is an editor of the GNLU Journal of Law, Development and Politics. On behalf of research scholars at GNLU, I extend a very warm welcome to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Palak, for that warm introduction. And
Sir, now you can see people.
Yes.
So you can also put on your video, sir, please.
No. I'm angry with all of them.
Okay. I see.
I can see 3 plus 3, 9, 10 students. That's all. 4 plus 4, 8, 12.
They will start, but they will then have to stop it.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
Because already these are very difficult times,
Yeah.
Looking at the camera and now looking at a blank screen where you can't see the emotions of the students.
Yeah.
It becomes extremely difficult to talk to people. So my request is, please understand the difficulties of the teachers, right? Right. Okay. So today it's a very important topic. The topic is the importance of literature review for a research scholar. And the importance of review. Why it is important for a research scholar to review the research already done. I think we all look at reviews, right? Before we order food in Swiggy or Zomato, don't we not look at reviews? I think maybe one or two people should say yes or no. Otherwise, it becomes like a TV channel, Doordarshan.
Yes, sir, we do.
Yes, sir, we do.
We do see the reviews.
Yes, because for example, if you order food on Zomato, you look at the review, isn't it, of the previous buyers for the review of the restaurant, the its cleanliness, hygiene, service, the quality of food, and then you decide whether to go ahead with the restaurant or with the food. All of us must have done it.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So review, and you find the reviews of others very important for you to take a decision, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
It really helps because especially when you are going to select a new restaurant or a new type of a food, the review of others will definitely help you, right? It will definitely help you in taking a wise decision.
Yeah.
And especially if there are no reviews or if there are bad reviews, then you don't take the risk of ordering food from that place. Especially when there is a bad review, or especially when there are no reviews, then it's a new place, then you take a risk, right? So this is something what you guys do every day when you order food, either on Swiggy or Zomato, looking at the reviews. Same thing, if you book a hotel through booking.com or Yatra or Make My Trip, IBIBO, you look for reviews of the hotels, right? And then you generally, for example, when I book a hotel, I always sort the result based on the reviews. Whichever hotel has got a very high review, more than 9 point something on a 10-point scale, then I only consider those hotels for booking, because I don't want to take risk in hotels which do not have appropriate reviews. So these are something which can tell you about the importance of review, which can help you take a wise decision, right? So these are something, on a day-to-day life, we look at reviews. We might not, I do not know, like if I ask the question, how many of you have read a chapter on literature review in a PhD thesis? Hardly one or two might have actually looked into a chapter on literature review, right? So how many of you have, is there anyone who had visited Shodh Ganga or Shodh Gangotri? You know what is Shodh Ganga and what is the difference between Shodh Ganga and Shodh Gangotri? Is there anyone who can answer this question?
Sir, I know something about Shodh Ganga.
Okay.
PhD theses are being uploaded at Shodh Ganga. It is
Correct.
a site related to InfliBinet.
Correct. So Shodh Ganga is a repository of PhD thesis awarded with a doctorate degree by Indian universities. So this is something which you need to know where to look for, right? Especially as a PhD scholar, you need to, before even, writing your research synopsis, you should actually look at Shodh Ganga. That is something. Anyone who knows Shodh Gangotri? No? No one has heard about Shodh Gangotri? This is again a depository, UGC repository of research synopsis. See, for example, in Shodh Ganga, you get access to theses which are awarded degree, right? But there might be tens of thousands of research scholars who are currently working on a subject. How will you know that whether there is someone in India who is also working on a similar area? So UGC had created an online repository called Shodh Gangotri, which is a repository of all approved research synopsis. Tomorrow, when your research synopsis is approved by our SRAC and DRC, then we also upload your research synopsis so that others in other parts of the country, they do not they do not want to do a research because already somebody is doing a research. Now, why do we need to do all these things? Why do we need to do all these things? Why should we actually look into this aspect, whether somebody had actually gone to this restaurant, whether actually somebody had ordered a food, what I would want to eat, what is the quality of the food, what is it, like, why does this reviews matter actually? Right?
It adds to the credibility, basically.
Yes, it helps you to take a wise decision, right? Might not be, again, see, again, it has certain factors where you, in spite of all these reviews also, still you might not end up getting the best food, right? Because tastes differ, the quality of hygiene differs, isn't it? For someone, this food would have been fantastic. He will say fantastic. Another person will say horrible, pathetic. Isn't it? The same food, one person reviews like that and another person, and it is again, a matter to be considered. So the same food, the same restaurant, but there are different versions of review available. Have you seen that? I think you must have seen it, no? In the same restaurant, there might be best reviews, good reviews, even worst reviews if there are people who have given 1 star to the same restaurant and for the same food, right? So this indicates that opinion really matters. Opinion matters, and opinion it differs from one person to another person. Now, I have just given you some day-to-day examples of the importance of reviews. Why do we need to go, look at reviews? Because we gain from the previous experience of someone else, right? This is the message. 1 point message is we gain some knowledge out of the previous experiences of people who had been to the same place, who had had similar food, and therefore with that experience you can take a decision whether you would want to go with the same restaurant, same food, other thing, right? So this is the this is broadly, I'm just trying to give some day-to-day examples of the importance of review in our day-to-day life. Now, as a research scholar, as a PhD research scholar, we need to talk about literature review. Why? Because of the same reasons. We will look into see whether people have already done some work in this area, right? And maybe we can learn from their experiences so that you don't need to reinvent the same wheel which has already been invented, right? So you can avoid all those things. If something has already been invented, then what is the point in you inventing it again, right? Is there anyone who can tell me what are the essential conditions of patentability? When will the patent office will give you a patent?
Sir, may I? With
Yes,
your permission?
Yes.
Sir, it's a 3-step test that
Okay.
talks about novelty, inventive step, and application.
Applicability. So the first
along
step,
with section 3 of the patent.
yeah, out of these 3 steps, what you mentioned, which is the most important?
Sir, it's novelty.
Novelty.
Or
Novelty.
newness. Yes.
Correct. Novelty. Novelty is something very, very important. So please write down that why do we need to do a literature review? Because our research needs to be novel, right? And what do you mean by novelty? Like, is there anyone who can look into a good dictionary like Oxford or Cambridge and tell me what do you mean by novelty?
Newness.
Novelty means newness. Newness.
So, from the aspect of patent newness, something that has not been known,
Yes.
invented as of now. It is
Correct.
something that
Correct.
the researcher or the inventor comes from himself itself.
Correct. So this is what is the highest expectation from a researcher. Your research should be novel, right? So why do we do a literature review? To see first of all whether you can do something novel. If already there are people who have already done, and if they have written a thesis on the same line, then what is new in your work? How is your work going to be a significant contribution to the existing body of knowledge? See, the object of writing a thesis, now you are all research scholars, you will be doing research for 2-3 years, and then finally you will be coming out with a product, what we call it as the thesis. And that thesis will come out with some new principles, new doctrines, new theories, right? This is something, which you will have to do. Unfortunately, as far as legal research, maybe I will leave it to Dr. William to talk about research in other social sciences. In legal research, we have always been, concerned about the quality of legal research that is being taken up by legal scholars in universities in India. Legal research, as my friend, the Vice Chancellor at GNLU, Dr. Vivekanandan calls it, it's a non-starter in India. Because we don't call anything, whatever so far has been done in legal research, worthy of calling it as a research. Do you agree with this, or is it an exaggerated statement? Yeah, can we agree on this, or is it an exaggerated statement?
I believe it is an exaggerated statement, sir.
Okay, so you believe that there are people who have done a commendable legal research?
I suppose so, sir.
Yeah. So is there any name do you come across? You remember seeing any Indian name as far as a legal theory or a legal concept or a legal doctrine, anything is concerned? Can we call somebody like, when you talk about sovereignty, you attribute the definition of sovereignty to Sir John Austin, right? When you talk about utilitarianism, you remember Bentham. When we talk about rights, Salmon comes to our mind. When we talk about international law, Grotius comes to our mind. Right? Is there any theory that we can identify with any Indian name? Is there any jurisprudential concept, theory, doctrine, which we can attribute to so-and-so?
Sir, may I?
Yes, please.
Sir, maybe the concept of the doctrine of absolute liability theory in tort law.
Okay, was it the original theory?
Yes, sir.
Was it the original theory? Is it an invention of the Indian Supreme Court?
Yes, sir. I believe so.
Okay.
Sir, can we see the basic structure doctrine which was discussed in Keshwananda Bharati.
Okay. Is it Indian? Was basic structure not discussed anywhere else?
No,
Pakistan.
Idea. Like, see, we have the Supreme Court coming out with a number of doctrines. For example, the public trust doctrine in Kamal Nath's case. But in the judgment only they quote where they got this doctrine from. They quote an American professor called Michael Sachs and say that according to Sachs, this is a public trust and this is the public trust doctrine. Why? Where are Indian names associated? Why is that we need to only hear all English names, the Western names for all our jurisprudential theories, concepts, doctrines, philosophies. So this is something which I would leave it to you for someone of you to do a research on this topic, right? So the contribution of Indian research scholars, Indian legal scholars to the development of India-specific jurisprudence in India, right? So I think one of you can do a PhD on this, right? So you can do a research to find out what kind of contribution Indian research scholars, legal research scholars have contributed to the jurisprudence in India. So the problem is that's what I to some extent agree with Professor Vivekanandan at Vice Chancellor GNLU when he says that research scholar is research scholars legal research in India is still a non-starter, right? Maybe see whatever you have said, absolute liability, or someone was chatting that rarest of rare cases in Bachchan Singh, or the doctrine of basic structure. Assume that these are original inventions, but then these are not the inventions of research scholars. It was not there in some PhD thesis. So it's not there in any PhD thesis that you can quote the author and say that, right? So this is something which is a matter for serious concern. That is why we are pushing all of you to come out. Say our days have gone. Now it is very difficult. Even if we want to create some doctrines, it becomes extremely difficult for us to set the clock back. But now you have one wonderful opportunity. You have you are in the finest place. You have all the expertise available around you. Now your focus should be to come out with some very, very important inventions in legal philosophy, right? So that should be your prime object. And now, how do you get to know that your work is novel? How do you get to know that your work is novel? You get to know by doing a review of literature to see if someone else had actually done a work on this area, right? If someone has actually done a work on this area, then you actually get to know you. And if someone has already done a work on this area, you should not be happy about it, actually. Right? You should not be happy about it. In fact, you should run away from that thesis and you should drop the idea of doing a research in that, because already plenty of work has been done. But is there any possibility that there can be any such unexplored greenfield area that you can get? Again, possibilities are very, very less, because we are in the 21st century, and so far our predecessors have done a lot of work in many areas and many topics. Therefore, finding completely new is definitely difficult, and therefore you need to, for finding novelty in any area of research, you need to conduct a thorough literature review to find out what is studied and what are the gaps which has not been studied, where you would want to add to it. Am I making it very clear? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so the idea is, name anything, you just put any topic on Google search box. You will immediately get 10,000 hits, isn't it? And there will be, hundreds of pages. But generally, we don't even care to go to page number 2. The first link, we are happy, we got the material, yes. Right? And when in extreme cases, we go till the bottom of that page, the search page. I do not know how many of us even care to go to page number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 to find out whether there are, still more valuable material available. Right? We don't do such intensive search. Generally, we are happy with the first page of Google, and therefore we got it and our work is done. So that should not be the case. The idea is to conduct a thorough literature review, right? In fact, Dr. William will tell you exactly how to do it. But I'm just trying to, talk about the importance of this very part of research. And this is, in fact, going to take the maximum time out of your 3 years, right? Otherwise, why do we need 3 years to write this thesis? Writing a thesis, in fact, like if you sit full time, I think if you are very clear in your concepts, if you have a very in-depth knowledge over the subject, you can write a thesis in maximum 1 year, right? But why do we need 3 years to do this? Because research is not something like writing a poetry or a poem, like a fiction, where you imagine things and write. Every line that you write in your thesis must be backed by evidence. It must be backed by any claim that you make in your thesis must be backed by some data, some work, which should substantiate your argument. Therefore, doing a literature review becomes a very important part of your legal research. I think yesterday, Professor Vijay Raghavan must have told about the importance of identifying the right research problem, right? I hope you all must have enjoyed his session. Identifying the right research problem, people say that, half of the work is done. If you have the right problem, half of the work is done. That is very, very important, having the right research problem. But how do you know that it is a right research problem? Right? That you will be able to do only when you do a thorough literature review. So that you know what work has already been done in your area of research, how much publications have come, what were the views of those authors, whether they have followed the proper policy, right? Whether they have an in-depth knowledge in this field. Now, you need to know this before you proceed on your subject. Therefore, and in fact, when we say that you need to possess an in-depth knowledge of the field in which you are doing research, how will you get in-depth knowledge? By reading a lot of literature, which is available already in public domain, right? So that you read and then compare and link their work with your work, or you link your work with the other previous researches that has been done, and therefore you try and establish that say so this person has done already a work on this subject, but however he has not covered this aspect which I intend to do in my thesis. That's how you write your literature review. Your literature review, it's not about writing a summary of the literature that what you have collected. The second part of literature review, of course, that you need to write. That is the first paragraph of your literature review. You will write a summary of the literature that you have actually reviewed. But the second and the most important part is what the literature or the researcher who had created that literature has not done. And why he has not done, or what is the gap that is there in that research, and you should now try and use that research gap that you had identified in filling the gap and say that this is the gap, research gap that I have identified, and I'm going to work on this research gap to fill the gap so that my knowledge will be a completely new knowledge, and this will be a significant addition to the existing body of knowledge. Ultimately, the research, you need to know only one thing, that your thesis should make something, it need not be a completely new, but there must be a significant addition of new knowledge to the existing body of knowledge. That new knowledge, how will you do? You can do it only by looking at various literatures which is available, so that you completely read the literature. In fact, Dr. Williams will tell you how to approach that literature, and he is going to explain it step by step. I do not know how many of you have actually read all the materials that was sent yesterday. Is there anyone who had read all the materials which was mailed to you by Gopal Bhatt yesterday on literature review? No one. Come on, yeah, this coursework is meant for all of you to read, right? I'm surprised no one is there volunteering, because I want to ask some questions.
Sir, I did read a couple of them.
Okay.
I think one of the papers was left to be read, but tried reading all.
No, in fact, one was a PowerPoint presentation that what Dr. Williams is going to present right now. And the other was an article by the University of Kent. If you would have read that article by University of Kent, right? That is that's a the most simplest document I have ever come across as far as literature review is concerned. I think this document, you should keep it as a Bible for doing a literature review, and follow those questions under each of those headings, right? I'll see that. Let me see if I can share my screen. Yeah, so whether the screen is visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah, it's visible.
It is visible, sir.
Yes. So, in fact, if you read this document, this is just a 6-page document. If you read this document, and if you are thorough and if you have answers for all these things, I think your literature review part is done. This is such a fantastically written piece of work, explaining, like stage by stage, what is literature review, choosing the material, searching for good material, assessing the literature, developing the literature review, and placing it in your dissertation, structuring it, writing. right? So this is one very, very important document. Please take time to read this. This document, save it until you submit your thesis for the next 3 years. This is going to guide you completely whenever you have some doubts regarding literature review, right? In fact, writing literature review, all those things, I think now I should leave to Dr. William, and I'll come back to you again when.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I think you have given the a very good broad outline, and also highlighting on the novelty, the purpose of literature review in terms of novelty, gaps. So what I'll do is I'll take over to the next level of the discussion. Most of the points that sir covered are given in detail in the PPT. I'll share my PPT. Yeah, so what I'll try to do is try to touch upon two important topics or two important sections of the literature review debate, and that is how does a literature review should look like? That is, how do you structure it? How do you present it? And the second is, how do you analyze ideas? What are the ways in which you can analyze those ideas, critical analysis, and how do you place it in a literature review? Before I go into that discussion, we all know that while we are doing research, the first two things that we want to look at is identifying the problem, drawing on the research questions or the research objectives. And therefore, I usually emphasize, or even when I take my LLM lectures, I usually start my lectures with citation referencing or note taking, and then I move to literature review. Because I believe that if to identify the problem or the research area, I think you will have to read certain literature, you will have to analyze certain documents, certain the works of certain scholars, etc., etc. And therefore, I look at this as a very, very important, the first step of even starting your research, even before writing a proposal or even before thinking about a topic. I think so literature review is one of the most important steps that every student needs to undertake he or she wants to take a research. Now, we all know, I'll go a little fast here, that the objective of any research is filling the knowledge gap, and the second is problem solving, right? So much of this idea has been discussed, but I look at two major paradigms that when you are looking at the research objective, one is positivist approach and the other is the interpretative approach, right? Most of us, I don't say that in that context, but most of us would not be conducting empirical research, or we write papers which are not empirical. Therefore, we use more of the interpretative idea because we try to describe what you have seen, what you have read. On the other end, positivism is based on empirical reality because you're looking at the external, the reality from an external aspect. So you hypothesize. So whenever you have an empirical research, or when you're looking at using quantitative or statistical data, you need to have an hypothesis, and therefore you will have to conduct empirical testing or empirical research. But most of us in social science or even in law, we use the method of describing what we have seen, the phenomena that exist there. So we explore, we analyze, and therefore the dependence on secondary data is quite heavy. Okay, so and because of given that fact, once you start looking at literature, the first step is that you will have to identify your problem, and you'll have to formulate your problem in such a way, because that becomes the guiding light, or that becomes the point from where onwards you are going to start your journey. So once you need to have this broad problem, I'm not talking about the refinement of your title or the refinement of the problem, but once you have this broad idea as to what I want to do, you will be able to undertake the journey as to now where do you want to go, or how do you want to go. So I'm skipping all this aspect of the definition of what is literature review and etc. And I'll come down to certain things which are more essential. Okay. Now, what are the types of literature review, or what a literature review might look like? Now, broadly, there are two types of literature review, what we understand or what we see. One is a stand-alone review article, which is also a part of a thesis, or which can also become the sub-part of an introductory chapter. Now, I'm not looking at the review article because even if you do a very good literature review, you can really publish an article based on those literature review, because you will be giving new perspective, new ideas. Like I have a publication which is totally based on the review of the works of various scholars and trying to reinterpret it in a different form, or in with the different research question. So I'm not I would suggest, I have always suggested, and I see that if you do a good literature review, it can become a publication for you, okay, which can also be used in your thesis. Now, there are two ways of presenting the literature review. One is, many guides or many universities would expect you to have a separate chapter as a literature review, whereas many guides and many universities would want it to be a part of the introductory chapter. Even if it is not a part of the introductory chapter, but when you are justifying or you are providing the rationale of your thesis, you are bound to write a few paragraphs justifying that research problem or that research question. The main idea is to tell the reader or tell the examiner as to why this research is important and why you want to undertake this research. So I leave it open in terms of deciding as to where do you want to place your literature review. It can be placed within the introductory chapter. That is what I have done, and I suggest that is also one of the good way of doing it. But many universities or many scholars would want to provide a separate chapter. So your next, after your introduction, the next chapter usually is literature review or methodologies, etc. But yes, the point here is that you need to provide a theoretical context or a theoretical or a framework for the research that you are undertaking. So this is something which is very, very important as to why you need to do a literature review. But I also give you a warning that you need to be careful. You need to be careful in the sense that even if you look around without, commenting or judging on anyone, many of us try to list out everything that you have read. Just and to be very honest, we just list out because, and we need to avoid that, we read the abstract and we think and we draw one or two lines from the abstract and we try to use it in a literature review. I think we need to avoid it. We need to be very selective, and we need to draw from important literature, from important work, only those content or those ideas or viewpoints or perspective which is relevant to your literature and which I'll come later on. It has to be integrated. It has to be integrated. What I mean to say here is that the literature review needs to be an essay in itself, needs to be a separate content in itself, because many of the students and which is also a traditional way of doing it, and we will not go into that argument, but many of us do present what it is called as an annotated bibliography, or we say a literature survey, right? What you do is you just select one author, say author XYZ, and he stated this. Then in the next paragraph, you say author ABC, and he stated this. So we are not basically connecting the dots. We are not basically connecting the linkages of ideas. We're not analyzing the ideas. We're just sort of, giving a annotated, what is known as annotated bibliography. That also you need to do. You need to do that, but that is a part of your academic work where you select an author and summarize or paraphrase his viewpoints critically. Whether you agree to it, disagree to it, that would vary from scholar to scholar. Now, when you look at this, this whole thing, what I'm trying to rephrase here is that there is no standard or there is no fixed way in which I can tell you that this is the way of presenting a literature review. It will all depend on your research question and the way you want to present it, in what the director sir was trying to say, in a novel way, in a new perspective, in a new context. So therefore, literature review is very, very much needed, and it serves the purpose for every research, both as a researcher and as well as a reader or an examiner, right? So to move a little fast here, to uncover what is known, to provide a context for your research. Okay, your research cannot happen in a vacuum. It cannot happen in a context. It cannot happen in a decontextualized manner. Every research, every problem, every phenomena has a context. So you need to provide the background for that context. You need to provide the background for the context. So there is always an historical background that is related to your context, right? So you trace the intellectual progression, overview of the current context. This is very, very important, that even if you are doing something which is historical, you need to provide a view of the current context. The contemporary debate, the contemporary issues, the contemporary questions has to be included in your literature review. Okay, many times it happened that a person is studying on the concept of secularism, and they keep on talking about books and literatures that were published 10 years, 20 years back. What is the debate now? What is the current debate now? And why are you studying it now? So that connection has to be developed on that. So once you link this, the main ideas, the main theories, the main conclusion, what are the similarities, what are the differences, you'll be able to provide a solid background, a foundation for your study. And every study requires a strong theoretical foundation, a strong theoretical base. Okay, therefore, I would say that even if you're doing an empirical survey, right? Empirical survey will also depend, because the questionnaire that you prepare, the interview schedule that you prepare will depend on the literature or on the theory and the context in which you are trying to study that particular phenomenon. So the point I'm trying to make is that you need to look at the context in which you are trying to develop your research questions or your research proposals. Right? Just to add here, that even in your proposal, when you're writing a proposal, the very first step of registering yourself for a PhD, you need to have a sound literature review, because you need to provide provide the reader the knowledge, means the idea that you have the knowledge or you have the background of what you are planning to do, right? So that the soundness of your research question, research proposal will depend on the literature, on the types of literature, on the quality of literature that you have identified, right? So that is also a very, very important step. Even before, while registering for your PhD, it is important for your thesis, etc. Another important point here is that while looking at literature, also try to look at what are the methods or the techniques that they have identified or the scholar have used to approach a particular problem. Every problem or every phenomena can be approached from different perspectives, from different theoretical school of thoughts, from different methodologies. So these are two very, very important components when you are reading any literature. One is, what is the school of thought that the scholar is using in order to explain, is using in that particular paper or in that particular literature or that particular book. And second is, what is the methodology that he or she has adopted in approaching that particular problem, right? So there are two dimensions, like I started earlier, the empirical part of it, and the qualitative part of it and the quantitative part of it. So you need to be sure what you are drawing, what you are looking at. And then the purpose is to give new interpretation, to combine the new materials with the old, so to reframe, to re-question, to come up with new ideas. But more important, like somebody said earlier, is to provide credibility to the researcher, right? It gives you, as well as the reader, the feeling that the researcher has a good knowledge in the specified field. He has read in that particular field. He knows something more in that particular field. So these are certain things that are very, very important, are very, very essential for literature review. So like I said, that do not give an annotated bibliography. You need to narrate it in an essay form, and within your narration you should be able to identify gaps, you should be able to agree, you should be able to disagree, you should be able to come with new points, new etc. Right? So this is a very broad way in why literature review is important. I think you can, this is just trying to explain things in different way. Yeah. So I look at this idea, like you need to develop. If someone has a question, please, you can stop me because I am skipping some of these slides about the purpose, the goals, etc. So if anyone has a question, please stop me. Yeah, so I would say there are 4 steps in which you should undertake your literature review, or 4 important steps to which you should undertake your literature review. First is you search the existing literature in your area of interest. Where do you search it? Yeah. Yeah, Abhishek, you raise your hand. Okay. So the first step is to search the existing literature in your area. How do you search it? Right? There are various ways of looking at it. Sir has told you, like you can go to Shodhganga, you Google around. There are so many sites through which like JSTOR, EPW, all this in or library. You go to the library and you do, and you are fortunate enough that you have the internet and the computers, and just by typing the keywords, you will be able to browse through various literature, right? Then you have to review the literature obtained, and I'll tell you what you need to do to review. Review the literature and develop a theoretical framework, which I said earlier, and then you start writing the literature. So now let's look at one of the 4 steps that we are talking about. So first of all, how do you find the relevant reading? So you go to the library catalog, you go to various database, and you try to skim through the various titles, look at the abstracts, and therefore I use this word use the snowball techniques. What is the snowball technique is, most of you will know it in sampling. Like I refer to a particular article and I found, and through that article, I will go to the bibliography or to the footnotes or to the citation and look for relevant material in that particular area. So that is called snowball. So I'm not saying that we are copying, reciting that material. We are trying to go to the original text or original source. Now, in that way, you will be able to identify key scholars, key authors in that particular domain, in that particular topic or that particular area. So that is one of the best way in which you go to the bibliography of other scholars and try to look at it, right? So second important way of looking at the literature is to use the SQ3R method. Most of you know about it. You survey, you question, you read, you recall, and you review, right? Now, just like I said, I was just like I was saying, just to share a small anecdote with you, that I was telling in one of my classes to the students that you should skim to the book. You did not read the book from cover to cover. You should be able to extract or mine out what are the important chapters or sub-chapters or subtopic which is important for you. This is one way in which you do the general survey of a particular text or a particular book. And unfortunately, when I was evaluating the LLM script, the person wrote the same thing in the script. So this is not to be quoted or cited. The strategies are only to be learned. So I'm just giving you an example of certain strategies. So they are not the theoretical work which you should quote me saying that, sir, you told me not to read the books. I have not read the book, right? So don't do that. So the point here is I'm trying to make is that, sorry. So you need to survey. That is this is the techniques that are used in reading. That first of all, you just get the gist of the relevant material, because there are many things that it's like a trailer. Like you watch a trailer on the YouTube or anything, and then you find that, oh, the movie might be good or may be good, and then I will watch the whole movie. Okay, but you need to have the question in mind. Need to have the research question in mind, in the sense that, does it answer your research question? Does it add to your objective? Therefore, I say that your research questions, your research objectives should be placed on your desk or on certain places which is ever visible to you, because that will give you a focus of what you want to read and what you should not read. You need to be practical in that aspect, right? Once you are able to do that, then you identify that, then you read the text carefully, right? And then you review it, whatever it is. But what is more important here is that you identify the keywords, you use highlighters, you use sticker notes, but you need to annotate the text. This is something which I tell very often, that please take your notes. How you take your notes, that depends on you. I used to earlier that we used to use cards, reference cards, right? So reference card, what I will tell you is that, I'll give you another example, that you need to code your literature. Say, for example, you're reading a newspaper, so you make a cutout of everything, right? So you make a cutout, then you stack it around, that all these articles, editorial note is related to topic A or objective A. All this editorial note is related to topic B. All this editorial note is related to topic C, or whatever information you're gathering. It's like, cutting with a scissor and stacking it out differently. So that is how we say annotation of text has to be done. So similar topics will be stacked in a similar way, in a similar box or a similar this. So what is more important here? What we miss out, or we commit a mistake. Even at this juncture, I commit the same mistake. And despite teaching to the students and telling you about the same thing, I commit the same mistake. Whether I download an article or I write something in a piece of paper, I forget to write the bibliographic information. It is very, very difficult to go back to the source Very nice point of view, very nice idea that I have jotted down, but I don't know from where I have taken it, right? From where I have taken it. Second important thing, I said evaluate the text. You please keep a note of whether the text you have taken down in whatever form, whether it is paraphrased, whether it is summarized, or whether it is quoted. Because the general tendency sometimes is that while you're doing research, you're so engrossed into it that we just copy word to word in our notebooks or where in whatever source, and then when we are transmitting it to our research, in the general research, both whether in the literature review or whether in a research, we forget whether it is a quoted text, whether it is a paraphrased text or summarized text. So therefore I say note down your comment, use different color, you use your strategy, but I would say use highlighters, use the keywords, annotate your bibliography, because while you're translating it or while you're using it for writing, you will be able to take care of it. Therefore, I say that when you read your literature, when you're trying a literature review, please avoid what I call a trap. And what is this trap? The trap is trying to read everything, which I stated, reading but not writing, right? And not keeping bibliographic information. So these are three important things that you need to keep in mind while reading for your research. I'm not specifying only literature review, but while reading for your research, right? So in short, again, not to quote me, the best way is to skim to the preface, to the introduction, and to the conclusion. Once you are able to skim to this three important aspect, the part of a book, I'm talking of a book, you'll be able to identify the main ideas, the logic, the signpost of the particular author, and this will give you a overview of which chapter contains what and how it is relevant and why it is relevant for you, right? So what do you do while you're reading a book or while you're reading a literature? Look at the sources that the author have used. What are the questions that you need to keep in mind? What are the key sources that the scholar have used? What are the key theories, concepts, and ideas? They're all self-explanatory. I don't need to explain them. I'm sorry, what are the political standpoint? That's my domain. What are the major issues? What are the major debates? What are the standpoints? It could be political, economic, sociological, whatever that's the perspective, right? Look at the historical background, right? So you need to look at the epistemological and the ontological points of the discipline. What is that, and how do you fill up that gap? Why that gap is there? Identify that gap, right? So I bring here two important questions. That the moment you're beginning your journey into a literature or reading a text, the first set of questions, that is what I call is epistemological question, is to understand the structure of knowledge on that particular topic. What is the structure of knowledge? What is that knowledge about? How have the scholar come to know what it is? What is the theory that scholar or that author have used? What are the moral assumptions that is used there, and whether it is necessary for you or not necessary for you, right? How is the particular literature important for your work? The second important question that you need to look is at the origin, at the history of the topic. What is the root of this assumption? How is it rooted? Where is it rooted? Has it changed? What is the social change that has happened to this context, to this term, to this philosophy, to this idea, to this concept? So if you're reading a particular author, what component has he or she signaled out? Why is he giving treatment to a particular topic? What is the treatment he is given? If he or she has given, how is it different? Two things. How does it add to your literature, both in terms of justifying your research as well as in being critical or substantiating your argument, right? So these are certain questions that you need to look into, you need to question. Therefore, it brings, sorry, yeah. So it brings us to three very, very important and practical aspects of research. I'm using the word research. It covers good literature review. Remember the purpose. Whenever you are reading, you keep the focus. You read with a purpose and write with a purpose, right? Because your aim should be to evaluate. We are not reading for luxury purpose or just for a normal understanding of the text. It's not reading a novel. It is reading with a deep purpose, with a deep sense of trying to understand the concept and analyze it, right? And therefore, you need to keep this certain things in mind. The critical way of analyzing, or the critical way of looking at a particular literature, that is the provenance. What are the author's credentials? And in today's world, it is very, very important for us to keep this in mind. That is the credential of the authors, because so many things are uploaded on the internet. There are blogs, there are a variety of sites. So it is very important for us that when we are looking at the internet particularly, or taking source from the internet, please verify the credential of the authors. That is one. After doing that, identifying the credential of the authors, look at his arguments. What is his narrative? What are the case studies that he has undertaken? How recent are his scientific findings? To give a practical example, many times when you read in what you call as academia or the ResearchGate or some such sites, you find many of the materials are just copy pasted and people, just upload it with their names and designation, etc. I'm not trying to critique or judge anyone again here, but I think you are much aware about such sites, such sources, right? So try to avoid that, because that would affect the quality of your thesis. Second important aspect is to look at methodology. What are the techniques that the scholar have used? How has he gathered the information? How have we analyzed the information? Were the data appropriate? Right? So sometimes we may address a research question, a research problem, or a phenomena, but then we may not be using the appropriate techniques, or even the sample size may be flawed, right? Maybe flawed or maybe weak. So it will not be serving or answering that objective, right? Look at the objective of the author. Okay, in a world where there is a boom of internet and anyone can write anything, anywhere, we need to look at the perspective of the authors. Whether he is a neutral, whether he is prejudiced, especially when we look at social science and problems of science and law, we find there could be prejudicial views or ways. So we need to be careful about the objective of the scholar or the objective of the author, right? Now, because when we as a researcher, you and I as a researcher, when we are trying to look at a particular phenomena, we go by this understanding that we are looking at a particular phenomena in a scientific manner. That means when I say in a scientific manner, we are looking at it from a neutral lens, or we are looking from a value free or a value neutral perspective, right? Because that's how science emerged, or behavioralism emerged in social science, saying that research needs to be value free, right? The value of the author should not come in the way of analyzing or predicting the particular phenomenon, right? Persuasiveness, which authors are more convincing, how convincing they are in terms of their explanation, their in terms of their explanation or looking at the particular phenomenon, right? All these are certain questions that you should keep in mind while undertaking a literature review, right? So I just give you a small, sort of a tabulation sheet in terms of how do you identify the various works. So you can prepare this chart. You can do it in Excel, you can do it in Word. That depends on you. This is the starting point from where you will be able to see. You will be able to make a distinction, or you will be able to categorize various authors by the various questions that you have in mind, right? Someone would be looking at the theoretical aspect, the research questions, methodology. This gives you a tab. In this, you can put some major schools of thought or scholars in a tabular form, right? And then if you put it in a soft copy, it becomes very easy for you to rearrange it or to change the sequence depending on your requirement, depending on your need. Right. Now, what is the fundamental of a literature review? That this is where I see it from another perspective, in the sense that many of us means I am a critic, or I am not in favor of the annotated bibliography style of literature review, whether it be in a proposal or whether it be in the thesis, where I apologize if I am crossing the line of thought, but this is my way of thinking, that I do not prefer that you have a title called literature review and then you list out the books in a sequential form, 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever it is. XYZ said this, ABC said this, CDF said this, etc., etc. So my idea of telling you about how to impress, how to create that research credibility, is to write a coherent essay, right? And when you're writing this coherent essay, it needs to be as a flow. You should be reading a literature review as if you're reading a article, right? Where you're explaining the concepts, where you're explaining the various schools of thought, where you're identifying what are the important schools and why, depending on your question. Like I never had a title in my PhD thesis. I didn't have a title called literature review. I just had a title called theoretical discussion, right? The title of my literature review was Semantics of Security, a theoretical discussion, right? So, and within that, I discussed the various schools of thought. I hope you'll be able to, I'll make it simple because I'm just giving an example. I discussed the various schools of thought. In international relations, there is realism, idealism, etc., etc. Then I went to look at which scholars have been able to look at my problem of security in a different way. How did it start? How did it, how did the history of that idea? Like I started from what does the Oxford Dictionary define it? And then I went to the various schools of thought, various scholars, and and you need to use a funnel method. That is, you start from a broad category and start narrowing it down to come to a conclusion as to what is the gap and what you are going to do. These two questions should keep on bothering you. What is the gap and what are you going to do, right? The how question will touch later on, right? How which schools have answered your questions, which school's argument is the best, which school would you like to continue and pursue, right? So when I'm saying schools of thought, I'm looking at the perspective, the broad theoretical conceptual idea. And this is just giving an example. You typically do not organize the LR around them, as in Smith argues X, but Johnson states Y, and Black says Z. So you need to, no, you need to put it in a unified whole, a logical structure. This is something that I was saying that you should not do this. Or, right? Therefore, the literature review, how to organize it. The literature review needs to have its own title. Title is optional, needs to have its own introduction, needs to have a body text which consists of aiding and sub-aidings, and needs to have a conclusion. You need to organize your or structure your literature review in this manner. So in introduction, you start with an introduction where you provide an overview of the subject or the issue under your consideration, which is in line with the objectives or the research questions. So you start with a small background, introducing the reader to the topic, and then as you go down, you start narrowing it down to divide the work under various themes or various categories. Themes that support a particular position, alternative approach. But you have to explain how each work is integrated or interrelated with one another. Right? Whether it is similar, whether it is in contrast, you need to seam it. You need to weave it together. No, the weaving has to be done. Okay, you don't give it in a paragraph form. You weave it. So you have a body part where you'll have aidings, sub-aidings, depending on your work. And then you summarize it. You conclude it in a very precise manner as to which is the most convincing argument, which is the most convincing opinion, and how you are going to contribute, or how this whole debate is provides a background and understanding or a framework for your research, and why you are going to pursue it further. And therefore, it is always said that after the literature review, you give the objective research question and methodology. So once you do the literature review, you know very clearly what your objectives are, what your research questions are, and based on that, you know what method you are going to adopt to answer those questions or to achieve the goals of those objectives, right? So when I say the review need not be exhaustive, what I'm trying to say here is don't try to impress just by because that is what we do. We take abstracts or cut paste from other sources and just try to show that we have read so much articles, right? So don't try to do a patchwork. Rather, focus on the pertinent studies. I'm not trying to give a number. There is no fixed rule as to how many books or how many articles should be there in a literature review. It should cover the area as extensive as it can, given the fact that the most pertinent and important issues, both past and current, needs to be incorporated. What is important is the historical background, the roots of that particular issue or question, and the contemporary debate. So try to maintain a balance between the past and the present, right? So it should not be that you are giving too much of the past debate and you are focusing on and not focusing on the contemporary debate. Danya, should we break here or should I continue?
So we have 9 more minutes.
Yeah.
After that, we will go for a half-an-hour break, sir.
Okay.
Maybe we can invite some questions.
Yes, I thought we can invite some questions because the next part is a little more yeah.
Definitely, sir. I thought you would be continuing next session also. That's why I did not ask them. We can go with the questions, sir.
No, I'll continue next session, but I'll start I'll take another 15-20 minutes in next session, and then we have the small exercise which Ayan sir has planned out. Right, sir?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
So, scholars, if you have any question, you can unmute yourself one by one and ask your questions to sir.
Can you ask them also to put it on the chat? By the time one question has been asked, if it is on the chat, we can immediately put in the second question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
So ask them to put it on the chat also. And also one by one, you can ask them to question. So they can unmute themselves and ask.
You may write your name in the chat so that I'll call upon the person. You can ask your question to sir, please.
So I think they have all understood it everything perfectly. So there is no questions as such.
Yeah.
Aditya, you have got a question?
Yes, Aditya, you may ask your question. You can unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Great. Thank you. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, Aditya. Yes.
Great. Sir, this question is for William, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, you have laid in kind of emphasis on distinction between literature review and annotated bibliography. Sir, so based on what I comprehended from your side is that would literature review will be something more like a response paper or a reaction paper?
It can be to some extent a response paper or a reaction paper, but that is if you're submitting to a journal, then the literature that you survey, you study and you analyze would be a response in a reaction to a particular topic and issue. To some extent, yes, when you're writing a current essay within your thesis, it could be a reaction to a particular phenomena or to a particular theory, right? So there is no harm in doing that, but you need to create a little better balance to be a little more neutral when you are presenting in a research form, that is in a thesis. Okay, in a journal article you could be a little more bold enough to comment on certain things.
Okay, makes sense. So so if I go by your presentation, annotated bibliography also includes critique, because then would it be annotated by bibliography if it does include critique of the piece?
Yeah. See, annotated bibliography is something that I think, or I believe, is something that I do it personally for my note taking. Right. I have scholar XYZ. I review it, analyze it, make a question. What I meant to say is that many students or you must have seen many theses that literature review, title, underline, scholar ABC, and then you give a summary. Then you come to the next paragraph, scholar XYZ. So I meant to say that I use that word annotated bibliography for that type of literature review.
Okay, makes sense, sir. Thank you so much.
Only 1, 2, 3, 4. You just
stop. William, I will also add to this. See, when we write a literature review, generally researchers follow two models. One is what they call it as the hierarchical model, right? Where people, the researchers arrange the literature chronologically, and from the oldest article to the latest article, they arrange it and then they present it like an annotated bibliography, citing the name of the work, the name of the author, and what is the substance of that work. So that is something what is discouraged.
Okay.
The second way of writing a literature review is what is called as thematic way of writing. In thematic way, what you do is you don't arrange this literature chronologically.
Yes, sir.
You arrange this literature based on the theme, thematically.
Yes, sir.
So you can say that so and so in this article, so and so in this article, so and so in this article, all of them said this. And so in this article, so and so in this article, so and so in this article has said something else. And therefore, I see that there is a thesis, there is a antithesis, and therefore, in my thesis, I am going to do a synthesis of these two versions. So that is the thematic way. In fact, the thematic way of writing a literature review is most appreciated because it's very creative. It puts all the authors with subscribing to a particular theme in one particular group. and then it results in consolidation of ideas.
Yes, sir.
Therefore, it is easy to for a research scholar to identify the gap. Okay, so these many people have said this many people have said this, and therefore, out of all the literature reviewed, there is something that these guys have left out, and that thing I am going to do in my thesis. So that will be a very convincing way of writing a thesis. Like people also call it as a descriptive review and an integrative review. So the thematic way of writing a review is called as an integrative review, because where you identify all the common ideas and then integrate it with your work. The descriptive review is, where they write a detail about a summary of the article, and then they give about what kind of method that they have followed, what was their finding, and what interpretation that they have given to the results, the inferences made, and all those things. That's a very descriptive review. And again, it all depends on your topic. Because there is no one way to do research. We can't always say that the thematic review is the best model, because thematic review is best when you have multiple literature available. But there are certain areas where we have very little amount of work already been done. In such cases, you can't do a thematic review. There you will have to go for a descriptive review, where you will have to say, you will have to try and identify gap either in theory or in the research method that was followed, or you will have to find out the gap in the way the result was interpreted, the inferences drawn, and maybe you can also come out with a suggestion that if this result, for example, I do not know, you must not have been exposed to a lot of ways of testing the data. When you will go into quantitative method, you will be coming across a lot of tests which are available. Then you can say that instead of for example chi-square test, they should have followed the t-test or the ANOVA test, all these things. So that is, it all depends. So therefore there must be again, as I said, there is no one particular model what we could recommend, but we are exposing you to multiple models. But what is best received and best perceived as a scholarly work, that is what we are trying to push it. But ultimately it is between you and your supervisor. Your supervisor will have to say that no, I don't want to get into this thematic discussion, you just bring the reviews in a chronological order. Then you will have to go with your supervisor's suggestions. So therefore there are multiple ways of doing this. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
I'll be touching on that little more detail about how to structure the chronological aspect in the next session. But okay, sir has covered quite briefly on that. But probably I'll present it in a chart form, and I think so you'll be able to get it better.
Yeah, I also see. I think one more question I see is Purva Kaushik.
Just a minute, sir. Just a minute, sir. There is one more question by Prajesh.
Sir, yes,
Prajesh
sir. Yes, ma'am.
Prajesh,
please go ahead with the question.
Yes, Prajesh.
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much for I have a couple of questions. The supervisor will be there. Any more get to have keeping so many places.
I could not hear you properly because of certain disturbances. If I have understood it right, are you worried about the number of literature? What is it?
It's not really on the number of literatures. No, if I have a kind of exhaustive list, or I
Okay.
have a kind of exhaustive readings, how can I, get rid
Yeah.
of it?
Yes. See, yeah. So, in fact, number one, while searching it itself, you will have to be very selective in identifying the right literature. Something what is unrelated to you, what something you want to get rid of, I don't think you need to even collect it. So, if you're looking at a literature on your area of your research, then if it has some corresponding relationship, that is what that is where the researcher should be in a position to establish that link between your work and the previously done work. Only when there is a link, then you will have to use that literature. If there is no link at all, then it is not connected to your work, so you don't need to worry about it. So identify that link, the factor, the connecting factor which connects the past work done to the kind of work that you are going to do. Then you decide which is relevant, which you will have to get rid of, and all those things.
Sir, can I come in with a very simple example?
Yes, William.
Like I was reading on literature review some time back. I'd got this one article from, say, Lincoln University, and suddenly when I came across the Kent University article, I found it is more comprehensive and it gives better understanding of what is literature review.
Correct.
So obviously I discarded the Lincoln University and I opted for the Kent University. Right. So I think this is a progression. You cannot really say that, I read an article, but after that I read another book or another article, and I found that particular scholar or author has given a better perspective. His language is much rich. His content is much rich. So obviously then I would drop down, I would also categorize them into quality 1, quality 2, quality 3. Such judgments I think we need to take, and it comes over a period of time. As we read, we will be able to identify as to how to categorize the quality of a particular scholar. Right?
So that experience that will come to you as an experience, after doing some amount of literature review. Then you will get to know that, okay, this is something relevant for me. This is something which has nothing to do with my topic, and therefore I am going to discard. All those things you will get to know yourself when you start actually reading those literature. So you don't need to be worried about the volume of work that has to be done. Because that's what research is for a period. It's spread over a period of 3 years, so you have a lot of time to sufficiently acquire a literature and then understand, digest it, and then see whether it is relevant, not relevant, identify the thesis in it. And of course, what is important is you should not only collect literature what is agreeing to your view of work that you want to do. You will also have to identify the work which also has certain antithesis, which has a diametrically opposite view, so that in your work you can disprove those kind of work if you do not agree with that kind of. So that is how the knowledge progresses, and that's how we develop the knowledge, right? So I think it's your tea time.
No, sir, there's one more question. Can we take one more question?
Yes.
There's one question from Purva Kaushik.
Yes. I think, how do we maintain a balance between finding a novel research problem and at the same time ensuring that enough literature is also available for review? I think, you will have to, as a research scholar, it's your principal responsibility to prove that your work is new. And how are you going to prove that your work is new? You are going to, cite a lot of examples and say that, see, these guys, so many guys have written about it, but then they did not deal with this issue, what I am trying to do it in my thesis. So therefore, these reviews alone will come to your rescue as a proof to say that you are doing something new. So that is how you will have to look at literature review as a proof to find the gap. That's what what we The object of doing a literature review is to identify the research gap. And once you identify the research gap, then it's your domain. That gap area, you will have to fill it up with your work. So, because you will not find a complete greenfield area. It's extremely difficult, because the knowledge is progressing. A lot of researchers are working, writing. You will not have completely a greenfield. So you will have, some people are the other doing it in one way or the other. So either you say that work, that inference is wrong, that interpretation is wrong, and therefore I am going to come out with a new interpretation, or you say that the method of collecting the data was wrong, and therefore this is a distorted result that they have got. If they would have followed this method of data collection, they would have got a different result. And that is what I'm going to do in my thesis. So you can come out with a new methodology, a new theory, anything. So for all these things, you need to do literature review. That's very important. And literature review, literatures only are going to come to your rescue to show that, see, in spite of all this work done, mine is still new because none of these guys have approached this subject from this perspective from which I am handling this subject.
Yeah, so there is one more question. Can I use literature from a different context, geographical, thematic, and use it from my context even when I'm not using it comparative? It is not necessary that only comparative studies will be using literature from other context. It depends on the theme. Say, for example, if I'm looking at the problem of gender, so I may be able to draw the problem that women's in other country or in another culture also faces. Now, it all depends on what is the question what is my research question, right? So you can use literature from the different contexts, globally, different culture, but it would depend on whether it falls within your given theme. Comparative analysis is a different analysis. You're bound to find similarities and differences. So comparative aspect is always there. A comparative study is different from a comparative literature review. So you need to keep that differences in mind.
Sir, there is one question from Shubhi Trivedi.
Yeah.
Shubhi Trivedi.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Sir, I was asking that many times we come across a lot of books and articles which are very bulky in their content, right? So how do we go about in filtering out the relevant material from that book or content, which so that we can include it as a part of a literature review? Because definitely it is not every time feasible to read the entire content or the entire book and then realize, oh, that was a waste of a time. So how do we filter out the relevancy of that material and put it into our literature review?
So can I answer that?
Yes, please. Yes.
See, what I said is in the very beginning or in the lecture that first of all you need to skim through certain literature, right? Now, once you read a little more, you read some paragraph or few lines in between, you will be able to immediately understand whether this thing is good for you or not for you, right? I give a very simple example that when you go to the YouTube or to a website, you don't watch so many times because we are benefited by this technology. Sometimes you don't watch the whole movie, you fast forward and see it. And then you think, okay, there are good dialogues, there are good things that I can draw from this movie or from this serial. And then you watch the whole thing, right? This is a practical example that we all do, right? So same thing you can do. You're studying secularism and you want to study the Constitutional Assembly debate. Obviously, you're not going to read all the debates. You're going to pick up only those part of the Constitutional Assembly debate which is related to your topic. So what happens is, as time progresses, you will have a knack to identify sources.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So we have one more question from Miss Ashmita Patel. Ashmita, if you are there, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. My question is to any of the speakers. I have basically two questions. First is, when should the review of literature essentially stop? should we stop it at the stage when we are done with our proposal, or does it go on even after that? Because the problem that I have faced in the past is, even when I'm in the stage of drafting my thesis or dissertation, I've felt the need to review more literature. So it keeps on going. So I don't really know when to put a stop on the process of review of literature. This is the first question. And secondly, I also want to ask, I've come across certain literature which are really useful for my doctoral study, but I don't really find any kind of limitation in those literature. So what do I do in those situations? Because every article, most of the articles, they state their limitation right at the beginning that this is our scope. So I don't really find any kind of limitation that I can mention in my review of literature. So what do I do in that condition? Thank you, ma'am.
Dr. William, I will answer this question.
Yes, sir.
You can supplement to it. See, there is no one particular date on which you will stop doing your literature, right? So you will have to keep on doing, you will have to keep on searching every time. At the end of every semester, there will be a review commission. You will have to appear before a committee called the Scholar Research Advisory Committee, where you will be presenting your work so far done at the end of every semester, and the SRAC will have to clear. And the SRAC will have experts in that particular area. They might ask you a question. No, as far as this, I know that there is a work like this. Have you gone through it? So if you have not gone through it, you will have to say, sorry, madam, I did not go through it. But at least in the next semester, I will continue to search for more materials, and I will do that. So this is how it keeps on. Sometimes even at the time of writing your thesis, you will come across some new work that you have missed during your review. Definitely. So you should be open enough to take it as and when until you submit your thesis. If you come across some worthy material related to your area of work, which is something very important, you need to quote it, and you will have to use it. And again, the latest the material, it's more it's of more value. Right. Yes.
So it's not only limited to finding the gap; it continues even after that. Like you can keep finding gap throughout your research.
True.
Sorry, all research is not in terms of only filling up the gap, or it is also adding to the perspective, adding to the question. So you don't need to only, that is one way of putting it, that filling in the gap, or identifying the gaps. So there are different types of research, like narratives or descriptive, exploratory. So it depends on what, again, coming back, what is a research question or research objective. Second thing is that there is no full stop, like sir said. But what happened is, the more contemporary debates, I said balance between historical and contemporary. The more of contemporary debates or literature that can be included should definitely be included. I'll just give you an example of my own work. I rewrote the conclusion after writing I rewrote the introduction after writing the conclusion, because my guide told me, once you reach the conclusion, there'll be many things that will come on the way. So please hold on the introduction now. It is approved, but not finalized. The reason being, all the new addition, new perspective, new ideas that came in later on was brought into the introduction. So there are various ways of working on it. It all depends on how you approach the problem.
Okay, sir.
That's a very, very good example that what Dr. William presented. So though we start with an introduction, it always ends up that after you finish your thesis, you will revise your chapter 1, the introduction.
Yes, sir. That is the problem that I faced
So
in the past.
that is a natural process, and therefore nothing to worry. So we need to go ahead. I think it's time to take a break.
Sir, may I add a sentence?
Yes, ma'am.
It's not only till that moment, but after your submission of your thesis, before you make your defense. there are certain things that come in the way. You're not going to say that I ended my literature review at this point, but you'll also have to add what came post your submission to the date of your defense.
Correct.
So it's a continued process.
Yes. I have seen examiners asking this question in the Viva.
Yes.
So after they say that this thesis is there, but then now the judgment in the Supreme Court has said like this. So what is your view on this? So you will have to be up to date until you get your Viva done.
So there was just one more small question that I asked, which is, can I ask, or we can? Okay. So in some of the literature, I don't really find any kind of limitation because they already state their own scope.
Correct.
So what do I do in that situation?
No, that is a good thing for you to say that this article might not apply to these things because the scope is not defined.
No, I'm saying the scope is defined, but I don't really find any kind of limitation in that article. Is it really necessary to find any limitation or restriction in every kind of literature that you review? Is it necessary?
Not necessary.
Not necessary.
Okay, sir.
Those articles will add to substantiate to your argument.
Okay, sir.
They'll provide evidence to your argument. Right?
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sir, we have one more question from Mr. Shantanu. Does the journal's reputation and the previous experience and profile of the author affects the credibility of the article?
What can I use? Does the journal's reputation and the previous experience
profile of the
author affects the credibility?
Journal's reputation definitely. Sir, you can go ahead. Hello. Yeah, the journal's reputation definitely, but we're not looking at the profile of the author and experience. What I meant to say about credibility, if that question is addressed to me, that when I go to the website, I find a very nice article written by XYZ. So in that case, I need to check the credibility of the author, that whether that author who wrote that blog is he maybe for a law, is he an advocate, a reputed advocate, is he attached to a particular university, is in academics, who is that person who is writing, right? So I will have to look at the credibility of the author in that sense, especially when I'm looking at online websites, blogs, etc. Right? Because anyone can post anything on today's on the website. Okay. So you will want to know who is Dr. Nunes, whether he is a faculty at GNLU and he's posting in the GNLU blog, or is just created a GNLU blog and just posting anything. वो credibility आपको find out करना पड़ेगा, especially in this era of internet and online soft copies available, etc.
Okay, sir. Thank you.